I knew something was wrong when the HR director, Patricia with the perpetual frown, showed up to my Tuesday check-in with a legal pad and the warmth of a morgue freezer. The room reeked of industrial carpet cleaner and career death. My supervisor, Derek, the human equivalent of elevator music, kept fidgeting with his stress ball like it might absorb his cowardice. He wouldn't meet my eyes, just kept squeezing that ridiculous foam sphere like it held the secrets of the universe. "We're streamlining operations," Patricia began, reading from notes that might as well have been written in blood. "Your position has been identified as non-essential due to budget optimization initiatives." Non-essential. Like a paperweight. Like expired yogurt. Like someone who had spent 4 years building vendor relationships from the ground up, staying until midnight to salvage contracts Derek would butcher during his lunch breaks, training new hires who thought ROI was a French greeting. I didn't flinch. I didn't plead. I stared at the termination letter for exactly 7 seconds, folded it once, and placed it back on the table. "Understood," I said. Patricia's eyebrows twitched. "Would you like to discuss our outplacement services?" "I'd rather gargle with battery acid," I replied, smooth as silk over razor wire. I stood without touching the pathetic severance package. 3 weeks for 4 years. That was less than a day for every successful vendor negotiation I'd closed. Less than an hour for every crisis I'd prevented. I didn't slam the door. I knew the sound of my competence walking away would haunt them longer. The elevator ride down felt like a scene from a legal thriller. I wasn't walking out broken. I was walking out loaded, not with rage, but with receipts, with memory, with a kind of quiet inventory that turns betrayal into blueprints. At the ground floor, the security guard looked up. "Hey Shally, leaving early today?" "Just in time," I smiled. "Apparently, I'm too expensive to be efficient." He chuckled, not knowing it was my last day. That Monday, they gave my desk to a junior coordinator named Bryce, who thought KPI stood for Keep People Interested. I sat at home that night, not with wine and tissues, but with my laptop and a spreadsheet labeled The Architecture. At the top, Titanium Industries, the crown jewel client I had nurtured like a prized orchid. I onboarded them, handheld them through 3 system migrations, made sure their invoices never bounced, and even attended their CEO's daughter's wedding Zoom like it mattered. And now they were orphaned. My LinkedIn headline changed by sunrise, available for strategic operations consulting. I didn't sleep. I didn't binge-watch anything. I rewrote my portfolio from the foundation up, built a presentation deck that could cut glass, and sent out exactly 4 tailored messages before dawn. I wasn't just unemployed. I was unleashed. And unleashed talent doesn't beg for opportunities. It creates them. 3 days after my sanitized exit from corporate purgatory, my phone buzzed at 8:17 a.m. Subject line, "Urgent system access issue," grinning face with sweat, from my own former email address. I opened it and there it was. "Hey Shally, trying to access the Titanium vendor portal, but it's asking for authentication I don't have. Any idea how to reset the master credentials? Thanks. Bryce." Bryce. The human energy drink who once asked me if net revenue was some kind of sports term. Now sitting in my chair, using my nameplate, and oh the poetic justice, desperately fumbling with a portal I personally secured with military-grade encryption and a backup phrase in Sanskrit. I didn't reply. I just leaned back, sipped coffee from a mug that said "World's Most Indispensable Employee," a gift from Titanium's CFO, and smiled like a chess master watching an opponent realize they've been in checkmate for 6 moves. By Thursday, I'd already heard whispers through my network. A procurement report sent to the wrong department. Someone used Comic Sans in a board presentation. The sales director forwarded a proposal that still had my revision comments in the margins with "delete" before sending highlighted in red. The crown jewel, their weekly client strategy call with Titanium Industries, was postponed indefinitely because no one could generate the performance dashboard I'd built from scratch. I watched the implosion from my kitchen table, equal parts vindicated and entertained. It was like watching someone try to perform surgery with a butter knife. Messy, painful, and oddly satisfying if you were petty enough, which, surprise, I was. Still, unemployment didn't pay my mortgage. So I took what I called precision strikes, short-term contracts helping mid-size companies do what my old firm used to charge quadruple for and still botch. One was a logistics company drowning in manual processes. I automated their entire workflow in 8 days, set up predictive analytics for inventory management, and taught their team lead how to read data instead of just staring at it helplessly. Another was a boutique consulting firm trying to scale. I built them a client management system that saved them 6 hours a day. They paid me in cryptocurrency and homemade cookies. Not ideal, but cookies don't gaslight you during performance reviews. Each project stitched something back into me. I'd spent 4 years tying my identity to a company that discarded me like outdated software. Now these small victories felt like resurrection, like I was sharpening skills I'd forgotten I possessed. I worked from my home office, sometimes in professional attire, sometimes in pajamas with precision-applied eyeliner, but always with surgical focus. Clients didn't care about my corporate pedigree. They cared that I could solve problems no one else could see coming. Meanwhile, Derek posted a LinkedIn update, excited to announce our department is now more agile and cost-effective for Q4 growth. I read it while debugging a financial services firm's data integration system that had been routing transactions through what appeared to be a cryptocurrency mining operation. I saved the URL, wondering if I should forward it to Derek. I didn't, yet. But the ammunition was accumulating. The calls were starting. The rumors were spreading. And in 2 weeks, a headhunter would contact me about a consulting position that would make everything snap into place like a loaded crossbow. The recruiter's voice was polished, corporate smooth, and just ambiguous enough to be dangerous. Shally, I have a strategic consulting opportunity. 6-month contract, executive visibility, exceptional compensation. Interested? I was mid-bite into a sandwich, still slightly annoyed about a data migration I just completed for free because the client's previous consultant had apparently learned database management from YouTube tutorials. Who's the client? I asked. Titanium Industries. Silence. You could have heard my self-control snap like a dry twig. Titanium. My titanium. The account I'd built, nurtured, and protected for 4 years. The same titanium my former firm had confidently declared locked in, because Shally basically runs their operations in her sleep. Now they were hemorrhaging and calling for a tourniquet. I almost said no. I almost told the recruiter to recommend someone else. Then I pictured Bryce in a conference room, sweating through a Walmart blazer, trying to explain why vendor onboarding was 3 weeks behind schedule because the previous coordinator didn't leave adequate documentation. Send me the details, I said. 2 days later, I walked into Titanium's headquarters with a leather portfolio, a charcoal power suit, and the kind of composed confidence that said, I don't forget who threw me under the bus. The interviewer was Rachel Sterling, Titanium's new director of strategic operations, the same woman who used to sit 2 departments over and had once plagiarized my quarterly efficiency report, slapped her name on it, and presented it at an all-hands meeting. Shally. What a small world, Rachel chirped, fake as artificial sweetener in premium coffee. Full circle, right? Indeed, I smiled. Only now I bill by the hour. The interview was theater. Rachel stumbled through generic questions like she was reading from a teleprompter with a stutter. But when they brought in the real decision-makers, 2 VPs and the chief operating officer, I shifted into execution mode. I didn't pitch. I diagnosed. Your vendor approval process creates bottlenecks across 3 departments. Your cost tracking system hasn't been updated since 2019, which means you're hemorrhaging budget on redundant services. Your compliance protocols have gaps that will trigger audit flags before year-end. I didn't even open my laptop. I quoted their own internal reports from memory. 25 minutes in, the CEO leaned forward, blinked twice, and said, "Why haven't we been working with you before?" I sipped my water like it was champagne. Excellent question. By the time I left, Rachel looked like someone had just told her that her parking spot was being reassigned. I didn't celebrate. I went home, fed my plants, and updated my calendar, Titanium Industries onboarding Monday. I stared at that entry, back in the building, but not as Derek's subordinate, not as anyone's afterthought. This time, I was the one holding the flashlight in the darkness, about to discover exactly how broken everything had become without me. My first day back at Titanium wasn't exactly triumphant. It was beige cubicles, mediocre coffee, and a temporary badge that spelled my name Shally. I smiled anyway, because this wasn't a job. It was an autopsy, and I was about to examine the corpse of my former firm's competence. By the end of week 1, I'd identified 4 vendor redundancies, 3 criminally padded invoices, and a consulting contract so vague it might as well have said magic happens here. All of it connected to my former employer, still billing titanium like I'd never left the building. I didn't make announcements. I didn't send accusatory emails. I just started cleaning house. I rewrote workflows that had been bloated with meaningless corporate speak like synergistic optimization and proactive value alignment. I eliminated 17 PowerPoint slides from one proposal and replaced them with a simple flowchart and a reality check. One internal system Titanium had been using, ironically called Streamline Max, had been so broken it was routing purchase orders in circles. I rebuilt it in 4 days using basic automation logic and an actual understanding of how businesses function, not whatever digital vomit the previous solutions architect had produced. By week 2, the procurement manager stopped by my temporary workspace with a box of donuts and said, "Just so you know, that new approval system you built? We've seen a 23% reduction in processing delays already." I thanked her professionally. Inside, my spine straightened another degree. End of the month, I was running cross-departmental strategy sessions with finance, operations, and vendor management. What started as a temporary consulting gig evolved into an interdepartmental communication hub. Run it by Shally first. Shally caught that compliance issue before it hit legal. Check with Shally before you escalate. Even Rachel, former queen of borrowed insights, started copying me on emails with subject lines like "seeking your strategic input" and "would appreciate your perspective." Strategic input. That was refreshing. I never acted superior, never gloated. But I noticed how conversations shifted when I entered meetings, how my questions carried weight, how my name started appearing in executive summaries. One Thursday, the head of vendor relations leaned over during a break and whispered, "You ever think about making this permanent?" I laughed. Just here to fix what's broken. But internally, I was already looking deeper, already seeing the structural damage my former firm had been concealing with corporate cosmetics. The deeper I dug, the more I realized this wasn't just poor project management. This was systematic incompetence. And several someones, had been profiting from keeping Titanium dysfunctional. I wasn't just rebuilding my career. I was uncovering a pattern of negligence. And the higher I climbed in their trust, the clearer my vantage point became. The offer came on a Wednesday, presented in an executive folder by a man named Kenneth who wore cufflinks shaped like tiny submarines. "We'd like you to stay," he said. "Senior Operations Director, full benefits, equity participation, your own team if you want it." I didn't react, didn't smile, just said, "I'll need 24 hours to consider." Then I walked out, sat in my car, and laughed until I startled a parking attendant. 6 months ago, they called me non-essential. Now Titanium Industries, the same client my old firm thought they'd monopolized forever, was offering me a C-suite trajectory and a salary that made Derek's annual income look like grocery money. I took the position quietly, without a LinkedIn celebration or a victory lap. I just showed up Monday morning with a permanent badge, a corner office with windows, and a seat at the executive strategy table, the table with actual power. Every department head came to that table to justify, to request, to survive. I didn't dominate conversations at first. I listened, took notes, asked precise questions. But when the quarterly vendor reviews hit my desk, I noticed something familiar. My former firm's name, highlighted at the top of the renewal list. Their file was catastrophic. Overbilled hours, vague deliverables, inflated line items labeled strategic consultation supplements. I annotated, cross-referenced, and flagged inconsistencies that no one else had the context to recognize, because I'd written the original agreements. My digital signature was still embedded in half the foundational documents. One morning, a junior analyst asked casually, "Hey Shally, didn't you used to work at Meridian Solutions?" I looked up from my screen, composed as marble. "Briefly," I replied. He laughed. "Weird coincidence, you're referenced all over their vendor files." The satisfaction hit me like a slow-release drug. My name, still echoing through documents they assumed I'd never see again. And now I was the one reviewing their future. Email threads started including my name in the CC line, messages addressed to VPs and department heads. People began opening meetings with, "Shally, would you like to start us off?" Even Rachel had transformed, now bordering on deferential, sending weekly reports with subject lines like "for your review and guidance." The shift was subtle but absolute, outsider to insider, consultant to decision-maker. Then came the meeting invitation that would change everything. Subject: Q4 Vendor Contract Review, Mandatory Attendance. Required participants: Legal, Procurement, Strategy, and Shally Rodriguez. No title, no explanation, just my name. But I knew exactly what it meant. They were putting me in the room where my former firm's fate would be decided. Derek had no idea that my signature would soon matter more than his entire career had. I didn't need to declare war. I just started documenting failures methodically. A deliverable submitted 2 weeks late with no explanation. An invoice billing rush consultation for a project that had no deadline. A billing cycle that mysteriously included 5 strategy sessions I knew for certain had been cancelled. Every red flag went into a folder titled Meridian Solutions Assessment. I didn't announce it, didn't password protect it. I just fed it like a quiet fire that would consume reputations when the conditions were right. My days were calm, clinical, but my mind worked like a surgical instrument. I cross-referenced performance dashboards until my eyes burned, comparing email timestamps, project logs, and even metadata from document revisions. The deeper I investigated, the clearer the pattern became. My former employer hadn't replaced me. They divided my responsibilities among multiple junior staff, then billed triple the hours for half the output. It was systematic fraud disguised as restructuring. Then divine comedy struck. I was reviewing a quarterly audit spreadsheet when a message landed in my inbox from Bryce Mitchell at Meridian Solutions, com to Shally Rodriguez at titaniamind.com. Subject: Quick favor. Hi Shally, hope you're doing well. Sorry to bother you, but do you remember how to access the legacy reporting system for Q3 performance metrics? Getting some urgent questions from Titanium's finance team and kind of scrambling here. Any guidance would be amazing. Thanks. Bryce. CC'd, not BCC'd. Not internal, just desperate, incompetent, and digitally exposed. I stared at the message for a long moment. No anger, no satisfaction, just cold calculation. I opened a new window, forwarded the email to our compliance director with a single line: potential vendor continuity breach, recommend immediate performance review. No signature, no commentary, just facts. Then I archived Bryce's message. That afternoon, I added 3 more inconsistencies to my documentation. A project billed twice under separate contract numbers. A template that hadn't been updated since I'd created it, still watermarked with my employee ID. A strategic analysis report copied verbatim from a draft I'd written and never submitted. The foundation was cracking. That week, compliance responded, "Thanks for the flag. Looping in vendor management. Please prepare relevant documentation for the Q4 review session." No questions, no pushback, just green lights. I didn't celebrate. I poured myself a glass of water, closed my laptop, and allowed myself to breathe deeply for the first time in months. I wasn't just reviewing a contract renewal. I was building a case. And Derek, Bryce, Patricia, all of them, had no idea they were already under investigation. By the time that Q4 session arrived, I wouldn't just be the most prepared person in the room. I'd be holding every receipt, every inconsistency, and the quiet authority of someone who'd been discarded and returned with a scalpel. The proposal arrived with the kind of theatrical drama only desperate consultants and failing vendors can produce. 53-page PDF, full bleed graphics, animated logo on the cover. Title: Next Gen Solutions, Revolutionizing Partnership Paradigms. I had to stop myself from snorting. It was corporate word salad at its finest. Holistic ecosystem optimization. Dynamic value integration. Omnichannel disruption frameworks. Somewhere around page 19, they used the phrase quantum operational synergies with complete sincerity and absolutely no supporting data. I didn't speak during the initial review. I just highlighted, annotated, and marked inconsistencies like I was grading a freshman business paper written entirely by AI during a system malfunction. The internal review team gathered in conference room C, procurement, legal, strategy, and the intern who still thought she was someone's personal assistant. Rachel opened with her usual overcompensating enthusiasm. Well, they're clearly presenting an ambitious vision. Initial thoughts. I clicked to slide 4. Vision is fine. Execution is fictional. Several heads turned. I continued, methodical and calm. This projected timeline ignores our internal approval requirements. Titanium's vendor onboarding protocol requires 14 business days, not 7. Click. This workflow diagram is a stock template from a design library. It's identical to what they pitched our competitor last quarter. Same architecture, different color scheme. Click. This cost breakdown includes a line item for inspirational strategy sessions. That's not a deliverable. That's a motivational speaker. The intern coughed to hide laughter. I kept dissecting, dismantling the proposal with surgical precision. Every inflated buzzword cut down, every recycled concept exposed. Every innovative solution I'd personally developed 3 years ago while working at that firm revealed. No one knew. Not yet. Then it happened. The procurement director, Nina, who'd been chewing her pen like it owed her money, grinned and said, "Damn, Shally. You sure you didn't write their playbook?" A few chuckles. Someone muttered, "She's running a masterclass in proposal destruction." I leaned back slightly. Not arrogant, not smug, just settled. Let's just say I'm familiar with their methodology. Rachel blinked rapidly. Nina's grin widened. No one pressed further, but the atmosphere shifted. For the first time, I wasn't just the efficient consultant. I was the authority, the insider, the one who could see through smoke and name every ghost hiding in the margins. By the end of the session, the conclusion was unanimous. The proposal looked professional, but it was fundamentally hollow. Polish doesn't equal substance. Rachel attempted damage control. We could request revisions, give them another opportunity to. No, I said, calm and final. We demand competence. If they can't deliver that initially, there's nothing left to salvage. Silence. Agreement. I didn't stay for the post-meeting discussion. I gathered my materials, nodded once, and left. Behind me, Nina whispered, "Note to self, never underestimate her." I smiled slightly. They still didn't fully understand. I wasn't being vindictive. I was being thorough. And the real confrontation was scheduled for next week, when I'd be sitting across from Derek face to face, not as his former subordinate, but as the one determining whether he kept his lifeline. The final meeting wasn't dramatic. No shouting matches, no theatrical confrontations, just 6 department heads, 1 agenda, and a ticking clock. Rachel made one last attempt at salvation. I still believe Meridian Solutions offers legacy value. They understand our historical processes. We've collaborated for years. I didn't flinch. I simply opened the performance analysis on the shared screen. Legacy value doesn't justify systematic overcharging, missed deadlines, and copy-pasted solutions. Legal chimed in, contractually, they've missed 6 key performance indicators across 3 quarters. Procurement added, their proposal is fundamentally unsubstantial. We'd be laughed out of the next board review if we approved this. One by one, heads nodded. Then came the vote. Unanimous. Proposal rejected. Contract terminated. I didn't celebrate. I just opened a fresh email draft and began typing the formal termination notice, my fingers precise on the keyboard. Dear Vendor Relations Team at Meridian Solutions, after comprehensive review, we've concluded that your submitted proposal fails to meet Titanium Industries' operational and financial standards for Q4 contract renewal. Each sentence was polished and professional. No venom, no sarcasm, just bulletproof corporate communication with a blade hidden between the lines. When I scrolled to the recipient field, I saw it, primary contact, Patricia Hendricks, Director of Client Relations, Meridian Solutions. Patricia. The same Patricia who'd read my termination letter like she was ordering lunch. Who'd avoided eye contact and called it just business, nothing personal. The one who'd handed me my walking papers and reminded me to return my security badge. I paused for exactly 3 seconds, let the irony settle. Now I was writing the termination letter, and Patricia would be the one reading it. I clicked send without hesitation, then opened my calendar and scheduled a 1 p.m. lunch with Apex Consulting Group, Meridian's biggest competitor, the one who'd been circling like sharks ever since the cracks started showing. I packed my laptop, stood up, and walked out. As I passed Rachel's desk, she looked up with a hesitant nod. I returned it with a professional smile. Professional, but not warm. The tide hadn't just turned. It had swallowed the entire coastline, and I was already scouting opportunities from higher ground. The meeting invitation hit my inbox at 7:47 a.m. sharp. Subject: Vendor Follow-up Discussion, Meridian Solutions. Optional attendees: Strategy, Legal, Operations, and Shally Rodriguez. Optional, amusing. I didn't click accept. I just showed up. The conference room smelled like anxiety and cheap cologne. Morning sunlight cut through the windows, casting sharp geometric shadows across the polished table. And there he was. Derek. Same ill-fitting khakis, same oversized blazer, same desperate gleam beneath what he probably thought was a charming smile. He stood when he saw me, face draining 2 shades. Shally, I wasn't expecting. I sat down directly across from him, placed my notebook on the table, and offered a smile that could slice through steel. Let's begin. Derek stumbled through his pitch. Something about reaffirming the historical value of our partnership and streamlining next-generation operational touchpoints. He even used the phrase mutual legacy optimization, which sounded like he was selling cemetery plots. I didn't interrupt, didn't smirk. I just watched, listened, absorbed the flop sweat building at his collar. The way he glanced at my hands like maybe he was hoping I'd offer mercy, extend a lifeline, as if I didn't remember every late night he dumped work on my desk with a casual "you're better at detail work." As if I'd forgotten being called non-essential by a man who couldn't spell essential. He finished with a weak smile. We'd really appreciate the opportunity to move forward together. I closed my notebook, leaned in slightly. Calm, clear. We're moving in a different direction. Silence. The kind that echoes. Derek blinked. Look, if there's anything I can do to. I stood. You already did everything you needed to do. I walked out through the corridor of glass offices and half-familiar faces that used to look through me like I was office furniture. I hit the lobby just as my phone buzzed. Incoming call, Maya Chun, CEO, Apex Consulting Group. I answered on the second ring. Shally Rodriguez. A pause, then laughter on the other end. Perfect timing. We just finalized your partnership agreement. Welcome to the executive team. I pushed through the revolving door into sunlight. I didn't look back, not once. Derek was probably still upstairs, stewing in that conference room, trying to figure out where it all went wrong. The answer was simple. The day they cut me loose, they didn't just lose an employee. They created a weapon. And today, it finally found its target. There's something chilling about someone who weaponizes competence. I didn't write angry reviews or burn bridges publicly. I rebuilt my power from the shadows and let excellence do the destroying. In corporate America, that kind of quiet vengeance speaks louder than any tantrum. Sometimes the most ruthless thing you can do is succeed spectacularly without them.